Welcome back, Mr. Goodberry. The First Star Logistics studio is fully equipped and ready to record.
Welcome back to Bengals on the Brain, presented by First Star Logistics. I'm your host, Joe Goodberry. This is episode 91. Best Bengals to ever wear 91. I bet it's going to be Trey Hendrickson. We've got a question later about Hendrickson that we'll get to and maybe dive into some of his longevity with the team. But I bet that'll be the best number 91. You may remember, if you're in my age range, Robert Geathers wore 91 for a long time. And if you're even older, maybe an underrated guy, the next best, started on the 88 Super Bowl team. Carl Zander, second-round pick, linebacker out of Tennessee, played over 100 games for the Bengals. Look at this neck roll on this guy. He was padded to the max. Look how the pads were so big back then. Maybe they probably didn't have less concussions, right? But I always think like those big pads probably protected heads from banging around because you probably couldn't avoid making contact with those shoulder pads. But yeah, Carl Zander, shout out there if you guys remember him. We've got mini camp or mandatory. This is the first day of mandatory Bengals practices. We've seen Jamar Chase in the building. We haven't seen him all spring. That started today. I'm recording Monday night. So this is more of a setup to what we expect to see for the 3 days of mandatory Bengals practices, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. On Friday's show, we'll recap all the news and notes and everything that have happened in camp. So if something happens on Tuesday, that's huge news, an injury or something positive, let's hope for. This will already be out of date, but still a lot of questions and burning questions about what we want to see and what we want to see heading into this now serious part of the offseason for the 2024 Bengals. And I received those on Twitter at Joe Goodberry. If you don't follow me there, make sure you do if you're on Twitter and X. And we're going to dive into those questions because got about 15 of them. We're going to try not to spend too much time. A couple of them are really, really good where I was already thinking in my head, like, this is going to be, I could make an whole episode on this, but we'll try to keep it short and get ready, set the tone, set the table for 2024 minicamp. Voluntary, involuntary, mandatory. That's the word. Let's jump in. Okay, diving into the questions. First one here is from J. Robitty. Jake, do you see Mike Gesicki as a direct Tyler Boyd replacement? And how do you see Burton, Charlie Jones, Eric All, and others competing for his playing time and snaps? And this goes directly into another question, so we'll pair them together. It's from Hunter at H. Harden 15. What do you expect the snap distribution to be for wide receiver 3? And I'm pairing them together because I think number one, Mike Gesicki probably. I talked about this. I want to say it was on this show. I do a lot of other recordings and talk about a lot of other things on Twitter as well. So I could have done it there, but I said I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Gesicki had the third most targets on this team at the end of the year. I went back and looked at a lot of his clips and stuff from Miami and when he was franchise tagged and he was at that point still a very effective tight end. He kind of got lost in the shuffle at New England the past year. You know, the Matt Jones offense didn't really work. And they had good tight ends around him too. Hunter Henry was still a very good player. So Gesicki, I still think, has a lot left in him to be a functional number 3 and 4 option for a good offense. Now, does that mean he can't be replaced or upgraded on by like a Jermaine Burton being in the slot more often and being more explosive? Of course. I think Burton provides that explosiveness that none of these other guys may have. We'll see Charlie Jones. I do think Charlie Jones will play some. We're already seeing him now getting the reps in the slot when Jamar Chase and T. Higgins haven't been there for voluntary work. I don't want to forget Trenton Irwin in this group either. When he was signed, the reports were he's going to get a chance to compete to replace Tyler Boyd and be that slot receiver. So I assume he's getting a fair shake at that and being able to be that wide receiver 3, being able to be that slot receiver. I do think Mike Gesicki playing over 50% of his career snaps as a slot option, whether you call him a receiver or a tight end or offensive weapon, whatever. I do think he'll play that a ton. And Tanner Hudson will play that a ton. So let's not forget him. Eric All is interesting to me. You throw him in there because first he has to be healthy, number one. And then number two, he's going to have to climb up the depth chart. It's rare to see rookie tight ends make a big impact. I wouldn't be surprised if he was inactive for most of the season, to be honest. Even if healthy, if he's the number 4 tight end, if he's behind Drew Sample and Tanner Hudson beats him out, which could happen, that's not unrealistic. I don't think we'd see a lot of Eric All in 2024. I'm not banking on it. I think he's a bonus player, a bonus pick. Let's see what he can be. If he can be anything like his upside showed, then that is just the value pick you're going to get and where they got him. So um, to me, if we're going to say how I think it's going to shake out, I still think Gesicki is getting the third most targets behind Chase and Higgins, obviously. So of that grouping, I would go with Gesicki. And then I'd go Jermaine Burton. And then if you were to ask, like, all right, Yoshi, because a lot of people say whenever we talk about the receivers, why not Yoshi? He doesn't play the slot that much. He did, I think, 12% of the snaps last year. It was a very small percentage. Charlie Jones, they're trying to develop into that. He'd had some speed. He'd had a lot of things that, like, Trent Irwin doesn't have in the slot. Yoshi will do it some. He will get mixed in some, I believe. If I had to say who is next after, if we say Jamar Chase most targets, T. Higgins next, Mike Gesicki third, Jermaine Burton fourth, who would be fifth in targets? Would it be, and I'm not including the running backs here because we've got questions on running backs too. Would it be Chase Brown, Zach Moss? Probably. And they might even be number 4. But of the receivers, the weapons, not at running back, it might be Trenton Irwin. Don't be surprised if he's the 4th guy there, or if it's Tanner Hudson over Yoshi and over Eric All and Tanner McLaughlin and whoever else we can toss out there at that point. I wouldn't be shocked if it was Irwin getting a lot of rotation snaps at wide receiver 3. I think when they want to get explosive, that's when we'll see Burton, and I think Gesicki will be out there a ton. So both good questions tying together. Hopefully I didn't go too long there. I'm excited to see now that mandatory camp does take place this week, because that was one of the big things. Without Higgins and Chase, it was Trenton Irwin, Yoshi, and Charlie Jones as the next 3. That makes sense. Now, who's that 3, right? Is it Charlie Jones? Is it Trenton Irwin? I wouldn't be shocked at all if it's Trenton Irwin, as they say, okay, Higgins and Chase on the outside, Trenton Irwin in the slot. Let's go from there and start from that spot, and we'll mix in the young guys as we go. And staying with the wide receiver grouping, the next question here from Saki Hack. What improvements would you like to see from Jamar Chase and T. Higgins this upcoming season? Good question. And, we don't get this side of things. We're always excited for the new players, right? The new free agents or draft picks. And we always sometimes forget that, hey, these 24 and 25-year-olds, the Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, are still developing. They're at least entering their primes. And if there's an area of their game where they can improve, we'd like to see it. So first, let me start with T. Higgins. For T, number 1, I think health. While that's not actually like a skill or anything, that you would like to see the guy stay healthy all year, right? That would make his numbers look better. And would it make him change as a player? Maybe he'd be more effective, quicker, faster. If he's not dealing with hamstrings or ankles or whatever he's dealing with at times, mostly soft tissue ligament stuff and hamstrings and stuff like that. So if he can remain healthy, remain explosive, the one thing I think even started last year when that first Browns game, I remember, he just was not coming down with contested balls. He was not winning the 50-50 balls, the downfield jump balls very consistently in the first half of the year at all. He had a lot of concentration drops as well. I think that first game, he had 7 targets and did not catch a single one. And obviously the Bengals got absolutely roasted in Cleveland. The rain came down, all this and that. But, if he catches a couple of those or comes down with some of those contested situations, that game may go a little bit differently, maybe. We'd like to see T be him, right? That's who he is and what he did. And I thought he did that. He answered the call when Jake Browning entered the starting lineup. And remember that Vikings game, right? Catching that pass and reaching over the goal line. That was awesome. Like, that's T. Higgins. I want to remember that T. Higgins, that type of game. I think that's in him. And if he shows that more consistently, that's how he gets the big payday. right? We don't need him to be something different. We need T to be T. And this is where he wins, having strong hands, being able to turn the 50-50 ones into 70-30, 80-20 type balls, and being able to win downfield in one-on-one situations. Because sometimes that coverage is going to get shaded towards Jamar Chase, and they're going to say, hey, beat our best corner. We're going to put our best corner on you. We're going to put the number 2 corner on Jamar Chase with a safety over there. You beat our best corner. If you're number 1, go beat the best corner. And he has to do that. So I would like to see that level of consistency from T and the concentration from him this year. For Jamar Chase, it's a little bit different. For Chase, we see the explosiveness, especially the first couple of years. The first year, and then they really tried to put a clamp on it right on defense that they did. So I need to see Jamar start to win from the slot more. And his slot usage is upticked every single year until he got to like 24% last year of his routes, or his targets were from the slot. You look at the number 1. Look at that. Oh, I didn't get it. You look at the number 1 receivers in fantasy the last couple of years, whether that be Cooper Kupp or CeeDee Lamb, and they're hitting 50% of their production from the slot. It's so big in today's NFL. You get easier coverage. You're going against easier corners, smaller corners, slower corners. You're getting linebackers and safeties in coverage. You're getting the hot routes and the easy third down production from quarterbacks. We got to get Chase in the slot. And Chase made comments about it at the Super Bowl Radio Row about the coaches not really trusting him. Well, win that trust. Show them this year that they can do that. Show them that, hey, number 1 top 5 receiver in the league, I should be able to move you to all positions in all situations and run routes with you from any position on the field at any time in the game. Now, I believe he can do that, but getting that coach's trust is a big thing, and you got to be able to show that consistency and timing and intelligence and everything it requires to play in the slot and the toughness and all, which we all think he all has, plus the connection with Joe Burrow, that if he does get in there and he does start playing it, the numbers could be crazy for Jamar Chase. So those are the things I really want to see. It's not just the team has to use him there. He's got to look good inside as well. So it's a meet both ways for both guys there. Next question is along these lines, the first 2 topics. We'll roll right into this one. From Burrow, season 9-1. Does 2024's personnel allow, number 1, Jamar Chase, to be utilized at a higher frequency in other roles other than just split out wide? Can he be in the slot, the backfield, motion man, etc., as compared to previous years? And I think the answer is yes. And I think the biggest, probably the biggest key is Jermaine Burton, because I think with Tyler Boyd, for as much as we love him and had such a good time with him as long as he was in Cincinnati, he was relegated to the slot. And it became very apparent the last couple of years that they really didn't trust him playing outside or giving him screens and running the jet motions with him and handing him the ball, even though they did do it a couple of times in reverses. Remember, he threw an interception. What was that? The Jags game, right? He also threw a ball the previous year too against the Dolphins. Was that Thursday night? It was the Ring of Honor game, White Tiger game against the Dolphins. But they seemed like the role for Boyd was shrinking, and because of it, it almost put Higgins and Chase into their spots only. And I just talked about Chase's increase in slot usage. While that's true, you can't go full on board with it when Boyd was still on the roster, right? Because he has to play in the slot. He's not as effective on boundary. Number 2, who do we put on the boundary if we're putting Chase in the slot? Last year would have been Yoshi, which we're talking 6th-round pick. They really weren't comfortable with him until he had to play and had to get thrusted in there, and he did fine. But that's if you had to put Boyd or Yoshi on the field, you're going to put Boyd on the field last year. Now this year might be different. So you got Yoshi. That again, for the Yoshi lovers, the Andre Yosavash lovers, they say, why aren't you talking about him? This is the scenario also. If he shows he's that good this year, it's not just a T. Higgins replacement. It's a Jamar Chase enhancer. So now we can go Yoshi, Higgins, and Chase. Like if he's that good, if Yoshi is that good this year, put him and Higgins on the outside. Let Chase eat in the slot. Now we're talking about big, fast dudes on the outside and Jamar Chase in the slot. You can see the excitement on my face. The other one is Mike Gesicki, because he has played so much wide receiver and slot receiver and has moved around. And I think you can do 3-by-1 stuff with him, which means 3 receivers on one side and have Gesicki be the X alone singled up guy that's isolated on the one end. And because of that, not only do we can talk about what that does to the defense. I think we may have broken that play down before and what it does, but what it does on this side is potentially get 2 receivers into the slot. So let's say Higgins is outside. Now I have Burton and Chase in the slot with the 3 guys on this side. Like, great, let's do it. So to get to Jermaine Burton, because Burton played a lot of outside and inside receiver at Alabama and Georgia and previous stops before last year, but because he has that inside outside versatility, that keeps them unpredictable. And I think that's the goal. You want to be able to run everything from every personnel grouping and mix guys around and free up your number one. So, yes, I do think the personnel this year allows them to do that more often. And I think the other part is the running back room too, as well. I was going to say with Chase Brown and Zach Moss, but if Chase Brown can pass protect, Zach Moss was brought in here because they believe he's a pass protector, because they believe he can run out of shotgun. So now we can stay in one offense and shotgun under center, whatever. We can run from shotgun and get more than 3.3 yards per carry, because there was times that it didn't look like Joe Mixon could do that anymore and couldn't get explosive runs out of it anymore. So then now we want to go under center, and now that takes a slot receiver off the field, and because we're going to bring a extra tight end in, it gets murkier. But with Zach Moss, now we can be a little bit more multiple. Now we can have one personnel grouping and do a bunch of different things with it that works. And to keep going with that theme of, I touched on it with under center and shotgun, but from St. Palm, what is the ideal ratio for under center and shotgun mix? And he follows that up. Or is that overblown by the media? Which I don't know. Is that something that is talked about through other parts of Cincinnati media? I actually don't know. I know a lot of people have said the Bengals have to get under center and run the ball more and yada, yada, yada. And there's probably truth to that. Number one, they need to make the passing game easier on Joe Burrow. They need to protect Joe Burrow more. I would not disagree with that. To think they need to run the ball more, I don't know that I agree with that, unless they were a fantastic running team, and they have not been, right? So, number one, do they have the running scheme to be a more running team, to be a more versatile running team? Or is the run game just a complement to an extraordinary passing game? And some people may even pull the reins back on that. They're not extraordinary. They're just okay. For a shotgun major spread passing offense, they've been very, very good. They've let Joe Burrow do what Joe Burrow does, which is read the defense, pick them apart, and give it to their playmakers to make plays. Can you be mad at that? So for me, yes, I would like to see them go under center more. So for Burrow, it's been at like a 68% to 70% clip, depending on what you're looking at. They've been under center they've been in shotgun through stretches at times, 95% of the time. Remember when the first 2 weeks of the 2022 season, I think it was, and they're trying to mix under center, shotgun pretty evenly, and it was just way too clear they were running under center and they were throwing out a shotgun. So they scrapped it, went straight shotgun for the rest of the year. So if you use that section and add the context to it, there's times where they're like 88% to 90% shotgun. And now, is that where we want them to be? That seems to be on the extreme side, and they have been on the extreme side in the most parts of Burrow's healthy stretches. So however you want to classify those. I remember looking at this before. But when Browning came in, they got to closer to a 50-50. And it wasn't a true 50-50. There were some games, there were Steelers games where they didn't feel like they can get under center and run the ball at all. So how do you want to take them, right? Whenever you look at numbers throughout a season, it's hard when you can see clear games that don't fit the data, right? The trends. If most of the time they're in shotgun, then you see 2 games where they clearly thought they had an advantage to get under center and run the ball, that dilutes what you saw for 16, 15 weeks, weeks of the season. So for me, the Bengals are a heavy shotgun team, and I think they'll remain that way. But that doesn't mean you can't have play action and RPOs and you can't run the ball out of shotgun and be effective that way. Now, do we want them to be a Kyle Shanahan offense, a Sean McVay offense? These guys seem to be able to put together a Ben Johnson offense in Detroit, right? We shouldn't put his name in there. He's getting a lot of good production, scheming these guys open very, very well. Do we want some of that? Of course. What Zach Taylor did with Jake Browning should be commended, right? I think we've kind of glossed over a little bit. For them to change the offense on the fly and add this stuff that it sounds like they wanted to add when Burrow was healthy, but then never got healthy because of the calf, led directly into the wrist. I think they were going to do a lot of this with Burrow. So what is a healthy mix? Probably 65-35 and not 80-20, not 90-10. Not just closing out games when you're ahead in 2-minute drives and running it down their throats through under center. So while I said it sounds like they can run a lot out of shotgun and do a lot of the same things and not have to mix their personnel grouping too much, I think number one, they have the depth at running back, tight end, and wide receiver to mix things up with their personnel grouping. And then number two, if they are trying to conserve some of Burrow, not give him those hits because you get sacked less on play action. You get hit less on play action. You get hit less if you're handing the ball off, clearly, right? If the running back's going to take the damage there, take the hits. So if that's part of your offense and a bigger part of your offense, and that doesn't even include the argument doesn't even include the rate of explosive plays you get from under center play action and easy completions from under center play action. You can get a lot of that from the shotgun game as well. So let's not forget that. They will do a lot of play action out of shotgun. I think we've already seen it in OTAs. So healthy mix probably doesn't matter as much as if somebody's overblowing it, I can't help you there. To me, balance and a healthy mix is really dependent on results. What does your scheme look like? What do your players look like? What is the opponent? Because it all depends on that. So I'm not really giving you a great answer here, buddy, but I do think they'll find a better balance, which means to me, doesn't mean run pass ratio when I think of balance. To me, I think balance is not putting too much only on Burrow and letting the other guys do some work and giving easy throws and easy reads and easy progressions mixed into your Burrow-centric playbook. So I do think there is a healthier mix there. That's a lot of offensive questions. Let's flip it over to the defensive side. Next one here from Duncan. What is the likelihood we see Myles Murphy displace as a starting edge? And how impressive would he have to be this offseason for that to happen? And that's going to tie directly into the next question here from Stephen Main. I think I'm most curious about the defensive line with so many options. If Murphy or Joseph Osai take a huge step as a pass rusher, does Hubbard kick inside some? Obviously, they'll rotate a lot, but who's starting forward in the base defense? Nickel, goal line. And if it's the fourth quarter, you need a sack. Who's in? Great questions, because I think this is one of the funnest, not just areas of improvement for defense, but competition. I think it's a battle. I think it's probably one of the more underrated battles. And we've got a question coming up on what are the three biggest battles I'm excited for. This is going to be one of them. Myles Murphy versus Sam Hubbard. I mean, Cincinnati's own Sam Hubbard, who gets a huge cheer when they come out of the, I almost said Paul Brown Stadium, Paycor Stadium, right? When they do the announcements, when they announce the defense, versus last year's first round pick. That I thought Murphy flashed enough, is on the correct path so far. His rookie year should not have gotten you overly excited for his progression, no matter where you were before. And it shouldn't have killed your hopes for what you think he could be in the NFL or hope he could be in the NFL. He was right in line for anyone picked between 20 and 40 and what they typically produce as rookies. So no change. But if we go back to what his upside or his impact could be, yeah, he could be an impact pass rusher. He could be a run-stuffing defensive end as well. He was really good at that at Clemson. I thought he was better against run than he was a pass rusher. So if he develops as a pass rusher and shows he can rush from the left end, so that goes back to the first question from Duncan, what would he have to do? For me, it'd be two things. Number one, show you can be just as effective from left end as you looked in college. And in your flashes, I thought you were better at right end as a rookie. So if you can do that at left end with the consistency of a second-year NFL player, plus you have to clearly be a better pass rusher than Sam Hubbard. If you can do those two things, can you displace Hubbard as the starter and be the starting left defensive end? I think you can be. And why I say this is because I do expect, this goes into Stephen Main's point, I expect a full rotation on the defensive line. So if we're talking about your base defense is Sheldon Rankins and BJ Hill at defensive tackle, and we're saying they're locked in at those two spots, and Trey Hendrickson is your right defensive end, who's the left end? Who's the left edge guy? Is it Hubbard on base downs if he's good against the run? Well, Murphy might be really good against the run too if his profile continues from what he was in college to the NFL, and you say, all right, he's a solid run defender right now. Okay, you may find a way to keep Hubbard in the base 4-3. I mean, if they've run a 3-4 defense also, in that case, maybe it's Murphy, who knows? But point is, base downs, you could have Hubbard as that spot. But if Murphy shows better pass rush upside, okay, now we're kicking out Hubbard and we're putting Miles Murphy in there. So now it's Murphy and Hendrickson at edge, and it's Rankins and Hill at defensive tackle. And that's your nickel pass rush. Unless you want to say, all right, Hill, you're out of there now. And Joseph Osai has played a lot of defensive tackle and nickel. Sam Hubbard has done it. Maybe Hubbard does that more. So now it's Murphy, Hendrickson, Hubbard, and Rankins. Now we're talking about potential for much better pass rush. When last year, a lot of times it was Murphy got mixed in. Murphy, Hubbard, a very hobbled Hubbard, Hendrickson, Osai, and BJ Hill. So, I mean, like multiple upgrades there. If Murphy takes a step, if Rankins is replacing Hill as that pass rusher, and if you're going from Osai, who really wasn't effective inside, in my opinion, and you're going to a Hubbard, that makes a lot of sense. You have upgraded significantly throughout. Now, if it's fourth quarter and you need a sack, as Stephen Main finished that with, who do you need and what do you want and who's going to get out there? It's Trey Hendrickson. It's still Hendrickson. Because until Murphy, I mean, it just wouldn't be a step. That would probably be like 3 steps where it's like, whoa, he's Rashawn Gary now. And he's just winning. Now that would be a fun defensive end duo. And could he get there? Sure. Do I expect it? Probably not this year. Maybe that's 2025, and maybe we see a leap from Murphy this year, which would be a huge boost to this defense and the young players that they need to step up. And he's one of the guys that need to step up this year. So for me, as we're going to go to the next question being the 3 biggest camp battles, Murphy versus Sam Hubbard for the starting left defensive end spot. And you may say starting 3 guys are going to get 500 snaps. 4 guys are going to get 300 plus snaps. You may get 5 guys with 200 plus snaps. Cam Sample being the other one. Yeah, it's a group that plays a ton. And so even if Hubbard and Murphy both have 500 snaps, you can consider both starters. That's fine with me. They'll play a lot. They're going to play a lot, but playing them in the right situation is more key than you realize. So I kind of cheated here. Next questions from Cincy Eli. What are the 3 biggest battles this camp on the roster? So I've already said Hubbard versus Miles Murphy. I think that could be very, very fun and something I keep an eye on for sure. But there are others. I think at corner, obviously, corner is probably the biggest one. It's Dax Hill versus, I almost said Cam Taylor-Britt. It's Dax Hill versus DJ Turner. 2 Michigan guys. Dax going into year 3, really year 2 of playing. First year playing corner. Oh, you can see it in my face there. DJ Turner, the smaller, faster, but not much faster. I mean, Dax is a fast defensive back, but the size might be key there. They're going to battle it out for the number 2 job. I expect DJ Turner to be the favorite here, but I think they're going to give Dax Hill every chance he can to win that job. Dax is still a very young player, and there's still hope that maybe that's a better position for him with less communication, less errors, more worry about what you've got to worry about that's right in front of you and your side and your section of the field rather than the entirety of the defense that's going on while everyone has to worry about what everyone's doing on defense. You get what I'm saying, right? At the same time, I expect Turner to win that job. still, I'm curious because there were some stretches that looked like in OTAs where Dax was getting 2 days in a row with the starters. Is he ahead of DJ Turner? Is that a thing? Did DJ Turner fall off the map that hard in the second half of last year where it looked like he hit the rookie wall? And that happens. Guys hit that wall, and next thing you know, they don't look like they should even be active at all. And they replaced him. They really let Chidobe Awuzie get back into the lineup at that point. And Cam Taylor-Britt came back from injury. And, we only saw DJ Turner sparingly. So he could hit a year or two jump. And if he does, then the defense is much improved for it, and you use Dax more as a depth player. But keeping an eye on that one for sure. Throughout minicamp, training camp, preseason, we're going to be on that one all summer long. Other than that, though, so if those are the two, maybe those are the two. I think there's for me, we're going to stay in the secondary and stay on the defense, but I'm going to list some other ones real fast before I get to the last one. I think defensive tackle, right? Zach Carter is competing directly with rookies Chris Jenkins and probably even McKinley Jackson, even though I expect McKinley Jackson to be more of a nose. How many active guys are you keeping? How many are you keeping all 5 defensive tackles because you just spent a third on Carter? Maybe. But Carter versus Chris Jenkins for the number 3 role as a rookie. And I know, like everyone here is probably like, no, Jenkins is better. You better play more. I agree. But rookie defensive tackles don't typically play that well, usually take time. So maybe early in the season, we see Zach Carter more than we see Chris Jenkins. And towards the end of the year, or maybe Jenkins just comes in and blows the doors off and beats him. If that's the case, that's great for the defense because it means Jenkins is probably really good. Carter's bad, though. So maybe not. Maybe he's just beating out a bad player. Or maybe Carter shows up and wins that job. If Carter beats out Jenkins in camp, are we like, whoa, maybe we got something here? Maybe Carter finally hit his final form, which doesn't have to be a great player, but can he be a contributing 4th defensive tackle? Sure, he can be. I don't think that's crazy. So I'm excited to see if that could happen, if that can be a thing, and he can win that job. Clearly, I think wide receiver is going to be a battle between, is it Trenton Irwin, Charlie Jones, Jermaine Burton, Andre Osibach, or who is going to play the third most snaps? And we talked about that to start the show, but like there's enough seats at the table for all of them to play. But if someone can separate themselves, that's not a bad thing at all. So watching who does, who makes plays throughout camps and preseason, probably going to be key to who plays more throughout the regular season. One more before I get to the last one. Zach Moss versus Chase Brown. And like you may not even think that's a competition because both are going to play. Both seem like they're going to play a lot. We talked about Chase Brown a bunch last episode. There is, I think, some competition because there's room for Chase Brown to win that job. So if Chase Brown does the things he needs to do, and he's the more explosive, the more healthy, because Zach Moss has dealt with injuries pretty much every year of his NFL career, even though Brown did as well last year, but his rookie acclimating to NFL style and body type. If Chase Brown can do these things and develop and show mentally he can pass protect too, I think there's a chance that he unseats Zach Moss as running back 1. So keep an eye on that. How well does Chase Brown look? How good does Chase Brown look? How fast does he start impacting the first team offense? So the final of the 3 that I'm really excited to watch is Von Bell versus Jordan Battle at safety. And they brought in Geno Stone, right? So Geno Stone, Von Bell are probably going to roll out as your starters to start the season. But we watched the tape of Jordan Battle. We broke it down. We talked about how good he played, his PFF grades, and what kind of class that puts him with guys like Derwin James and Kyle Hamilton and all these really good rookie safeties, young safeties that ended up being good players. If the Bengals don't play Jordan Battle a lot and he doesn't win that job, like you got to think what happened there. Are they just going to rely on the veteran presence and IQ and communication of Von Bell and just say that's what we were missing last year, so let's get that? Well, then in 2025, we're going to be like, yeah, well, you didn't have any speed in the back half and at the safety spot, so now you're going to go chase speed because you need that, and Jordan Battle doesn't fix that either, and he just gets lost in the shuffle. Or is it just a one-year thing while Von Bell is here? Or is it genuinely a competition, and we're going to see who wins that job? Because all the things Battle was lauded for coming out of Alabama could be reasons why in year 2 he has that communication. He has that veteran ability to lead the team and lead the back half, especially now that Geno Stone is here and can play a lot of free safety. I'm interested in that. I kind of want Jordan Battle to win that job. Like for Von Bell, and we had a lot of fun with Von Bell, he's Tyler Boyd, right? I want more. I want someone else that's more dynamic. I want to start fresh with someone young there and try and be better than what they were at that spot when Von Bell was the starting strong safety. So maybe that's just me. Maybe you guys feel differently about that one. And to wrap up our last question here before we get set for mini camps, it's from Bryson. Who are some under the radar guys you'd like to see make some noise and make the roster? And I'm going to start with a guy who's not so under the radar, but because I think we've been expecting him to make plays, and he has made plays throughout previous summers and preseasons. Is Tyson Anderson. Once again, would love to see Tyson Anderson healthy. I'm once again asking for the health of Tyson Anderson because I think he makes plays when he's healthy, and he was great on special teams when he was available last year. Trying to find a different word than healthy there. I'm really excited for him if he can play, if he can show that, if he can continue to bounce back once again. And they drafted Dijon Anthony, and they bring back Von Bell and Geno Stone. They move Daxel. There's a lot of things going on at safety. Can he continue to carve a role and be an active player on this team and be hot in preseasons the way he's been every year? I think he's a good player. I think at the very least, he's a very good depth player. I just would like to see it for a full season. But for guys that are more under the radar, Dominique Davis at defensive tackle, I think in the preseason, last year, he showed that he can, and he's 326. So, like, we're talking nose tackle, defensive tackle. If he can show improvements, let's say he got his body in a better shape, got stronger, I think he can be a player. I mean, I think that's where most nose tackles come from, is under the radar guys that you'd slow cook for a year or two on the practice squad, and you unleash them in year 2, year 3, year 4, and those guys are physically mature, mentally mature, ready to go. And next thing you know, you got to find nose tackle on the roster. And I think Dominic Davis, just in the flashes we got, shows that maybe. And I'm not picking guys here like Tyson Anderson. I expect to make the roster. Dominic Davis. Now, if they added 2 guys, I'm not sure he will, because like J. Tufele continues to flash, and I like J. Tufele, so add him to this group, I guess, as well. If Tufele all of a sudden wins a job over Zach Carter, I'm not mad about it. So, like, make some noise, Jay, and go and win a job and go and secure that 3rd spot early in the season. Maybe it turns into a 4th, 5th spot later as the rookies get better. But yeah, that's somebody like I wouldn't be mad if he has a stellar camp. Both of them, Dominic Davis and Jay Tufele. One more, Cedric Jackson at wide receiver from Auburn, 2nd-year player, last year undrafted. I thought he flashed a bunch last year in camps, and then now he's getting elevated. And honestly, we talked about like 5 receivers of like guys we expect to make the roster. Then you got Kendrick Perkins, right? And Pryor and Cedric Jackson and Cole Burgess and all these guys, these depth guys that I think are going to make noise, that are quality players. But Jackson's got some agility and some speed and some return ability. Kendrick Pryor I was looking for the first name there. Did I say Kendrick Perkins earlier? I did. Kendrick Pryor and Kwame Lassiter. different sport, mixing them together. Anyways, I'm thinking of that grouping with Cedric Jackson. I'm like, one of those guys can make the roster. If you got down like 7, say you have a rash of injuries or something happened, maybe at tight end you go light, or you go light at running back, and you keep number 12 Jackson, and I could see it with a big camp. So there are some undrafted guys, Aaron Casey. I'd like to see Tanner McLaughlin make noise, and like, I don't want to see Tanner Hudson lose a roster spot because I think Hudson can help him play. But if McLaughlin beats him out, is that a bad thing? I don't think it is. So there are I think it's a strong roster when you're struggling to find these guys and find the opportunities for them to even make the roster. Because I think that's the hardest part is, number one, probably someone will surprise us that we don't even expect. And number 2, there has to be a spot for them not just to shine, but then to actually make the roster. It's tougher on this roster. Roster's pretty good. Probably the top 50 is pretty good. You got a few spots there at the end. We didn't mention competition. It's my fault because it's only me, and I'm calling us we because I'm blaming you guys with me. We didn't mention the competition at punter and seeing those two go at it. So that should be fun. This has been Bengals on the Brain, presented by First Star Logistics. I'm your host, Joe Goodberry. Thank you for sending all the questions in to Twitter. There's a bunch more that I plan on getting to on Twitter because I couldn't do it all here. We've run long enough. Until next time, Uday.
Dave Lapham here, and every day I am grateful for my experience to have played professional football. As a player, I realize self-motivation, leadership, and appreciating your teammates are key. At First Star Logistics, you can use those same attributes to create the life you want for you and your family. Build your future by working hard like I did. You'll see results both on and off the field. Call First Star Logistics today and be part of our winning team.
Opportunity knocking.